Rome. Uh, the very name conjures images of legionaries marching on stone-paved roads. Gladiators clashing in the Colosseum. Senators debating in marble halls. It is one of the most famous and influential cities in the history of the world, a place whose story has captivated scholars, poets, and ordinary people for millennia. Its journey from a small collection of huts on the banks of the Tiber River to a sprawling empire that dominated the known world is a tale of ambition, innovation, conflict, and extraordinary resilience. To understand Rome is to understand the foundations of Western civilization, from its laws and languages to its architecture and ideas about governance. This essay will trace that incredible story, following a clear timeline from its mythical origins to its eventual transformation and lasting legacy. We will not simply list dates and emperors, but explore the human drama, the social changes, and the chain of cause and effect that propelled Rome forward. Each historical snapshot will show how one era set the stage for the next, creating a continuous narrative that spans over 1,000 years. By breaking down this vast history into key periods, we can see more clearly how a small Italian settlement grew to rule an empire, and how its influence continues to shape our world today. On this day, 2025-10-27. Every great story needs a dramatic beginning, and Rome's is no exception, shrouded in the mists of myth and legend. The traditional founding date, April 21st, 753 BC, is itself a product of later Roman storytelling. The most famous foundation myth is Romulus and Remus. Cast out as infants, they were suckled by a she-wolf on the Palatine Hill. That she-wolf image became a symbol of Rome's feral beginnings and divine destiny. The brothers grew to manhood and decided to found a city, but a quarrel over location led Romulus to kill Remus and become Rome's first king. Archaeology shows small settlements on Rome's 7 hills by the 8th century BC. Rome sat at a strategic Tiber crossing, was naturally defensible, and offered access to trade routes. Early Rome was a cluster of Latin-speaking hilltop villages. Under a series of kings, these villages gradually coalesced. Kings exercised military leadership and religious authority. They began major public works. They drained marshy lowlands to create the Forum. The Forum became the commercial and political heart. They built the first temples and constructed fortifications. These works laid the groundwork for the metropolis. The kingdom absorbed influences from its neighbors, especially the Etruscans to the north, and the Greek colonies to the south. From the Etruscans came architectural techniques, religious rituals, and the symbol of the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe. Cultural borrowing marked Roman civilization. The kingdom evolved over 2 centuries. The population grew, society grew more stratified, and a council of elders, the Senate, formed to advise the king. The monarchy ended not by foreign conquest, but by internal revolution. With the monarchy overthrown, the Roman elite established a new political order, the res publica, or the public thing. This was a bold experiment in self-governance, designed to prevent any single individual from accumulating too much power. Instead of a king, the state was led by 2 consuls, elected annually, who held equal authority and could veto each other's actions. The Senate, once an advisory body to the king, now became the central institution of the Republic, composed of the city's wealthiest and most influential families. It controlled finances, foreign policy, and held immense prestige. This system created a dynamic but often contentious political landscape, as ambitious men competed for honor and office within a strict framework of laws and traditions. The early republic was defined by 2 major struggles, one external, one internal. Externally, Rome embarked on a relentless campaign of expansion, first conquering its immediate Latin neighbors, then the rest of the Italian peninsula. This success was driven by its highly disciplined and adaptable army, but also by its policy of incorporating defeated peoples, offering them varying degrees of rights and citizenship. The most significant challenge came from Carthage, a powerful maritime empire in North Africa. The Three Punic Wars, from 264 to 146 BC, were a titanic struggle for control of the Mediterranean. The Second War, featuring Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants, brought Rome to the brink of collapse, but Rome's tenacity ultimately led to victory, leaving it the undisputed master of the Western Mediterranean. Internally, the Republic was rocked by the conflict of the orders, a long-running struggle between the patricians and the plebeians. The plebeians, who formed the backbone of the army, used their leverage to demand greater rights and protections. They fought for and won the right to have their own officials, the tribunes of the plebs, who could veto actions of the magistrates. They also compelled the patricians to write down the laws for the first time in the 12 Tables, around 450 BC, ensuring that justice was not arbitrary. However, the very success that made Rome great also sowed the seeds of the Republic's destruction. As the empire expanded, vast wealth poured into the hands of a few, who bought up huge estates, latifundia, worked by an enormous population of enslaved people captured in wars. This displaced small citizen farmers who flocked to Rome seeking work, creating a volatile urban underclass. The gap between the super-rich and the desperately poor grew immense, leading to political violence and civil unrest. Generals like Marius and Sulla used the loyalty of their landless soldiers to seize power, bypassing traditional political norms. This cycle of violence culminated in the rise of Julius Caesar, a brilliant general and politician who in 49 BC defied the Senate and marched his army on Rome, plunging the Republic into a final series of devastating civil wars and effectively ending the old system. The assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC did not restore the Republic. It unleashed another bloody round of civil wars. Out of this chaos emerged Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew and adopted heir. A master of political maneuvering, he methodically eliminated his rivals. He defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Returning to Rome as sole ruler, Octavian faced a dilemma: govern as an autocrat without seeming a king. His solution was political genius. In 27 BC, the Senate granted him the title Augustus and extraordinary powers over the army, provinces, and treasury. This marks the start of the Roman Empire and the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity. Augustus ended decades of civil war and professionalized the army, stationing legions along the frontiers to guard against external threats. He reformed taxes to be fairer and more efficient. He launched a massive building program. I found Rome of brick, I leave it of marble. His rule set the blueprint for imperial governance for centuries. Under the Pax Romana, the empire reached its greatest extent: Britain, Mesopotamia, the Rhine and Danube rivers, the Sahara Desert. The domain was linked by over 50,000 miles of paved roads. A single currency and unified laws boosted commerce. Grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, silk from China, spices from India. Cities grew and modernized with aqueducts feeding public baths, fountains, sewers, theaters, amphitheaters, and libraries. Life wasn't perfect. Slavery persisted and inequality was stark. Yet for many of the roughly 60 million inhabitants, it meant security and opportunity. Roman law helped resolve disputes and citizenship expanded across the provinces. The golden age of the Pax Romana could not last forever. The death of the philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD is often seen as the beginning of the crisis of the 3rd century. The stable system of succession broke down, leading to a near-constant state of civil war as ambitious generals fought for the throne. In a chaotic 50-year span, more than 20 men claimed the title of emperor, most of whom met violent ends. This political instability had devastating consequences. The army, now the ultimate kingmaker, drained the state's treasury with its demands for pay and bonuses, leading emperors to devalue the currency by mixing base metals with silver, which in turn caused rampant inflation. The empire's internal weaknesses were exacerbated by mounting external pressures. Along the northern frontiers, confederations of Germanic tribes, such as the Goths and the Franks, began to launch larger and more frequent raids into Roman territory. In the east, the weakened Parthian Empire was replaced by the aggressive Sasanian Empire in Persia, which posed a formidable and persistent military threat. To make matters worse, a series of plagues swept through the empire, decimating the population and further weakening the economy and the army's recruitment base. Trade routes became unsafe. After the final split in 395 AD, the fortunes of the two halves diverged dramatically. The Eastern Empire was populous, urbanized, economically robust. It controlled a defensible heartland and key trade routes. The Western Empire was more rural and less wealthy. It faced immense pressure along the Rhine and along the Danube. Political leadership was often weak and plagued by internal power struggles. The armies were increasingly composed of barbarian mercenaries whose loyalty was often questionable. The city of Rome itself had long ceased to be the effective political center. Emperors preferred to rule from Milan or Ravenna. A major catalyst was the westward migration of the Huns from Central Asia. In 410 AD, Rome was sacked by the Visigoths under Alaric. The physical damage was not permanent, but the psychological impact was profound. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to a foreign enemy. This was followed by further invasions and the loss of key provinces. They captured Carthage in 439 AD. This crippled the Western economy. It is a story filled with larger-than-life characters like Julius Caesar Augustus, but it is also the story of countless ordinary people: the soldier guarding a distant frontier, the merchant sailing perilous seas, the enslaved person dreaming of freedom, and the woman managing a household in a bustling, noisy city. Their lives, their struggles, and their contributions are the threads that make up the rich tapestry of Roman civilization. We study Rome not as a dead civilization, but as a living source of lessons about power, society, and human nature itself. The story does not end there, as we will see how its legacy was carried on by the Byzantine Empire in the East, most notably through the codification of Roman law under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, the Corpus Juris Civilis. The Church became the primary custodian of Roman culture and learning throughout the Middle Ages. The vulgar Latin spoken by soldiers and common people across the empire evolved into the modern Romance languages: Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian. Even English, a Germanic language, owes more than half of its vocabulary to Latin and French. Similarly, Roman legal principles, ideas about evidence, contracts, property rights, and the concept that a person is innocent until proven guilty, form the bedrock of the civil law systems used today in most of continental Europe, Latin America, and many other parts of the world. Rome's grand experiment in empire building failed in the end, but its echoes continue to resonate powerfully in the foundations of our own world.